um, the go-to when someone in your farm is looking to buy or sell.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And so, and specifically, Alex just defined a geographic farm, right? When you choose a geographic area to begin marketing to, right? There are other kinds of farms that we'll mention towards the end of this conversation. But the idea of a geographic farm, because that's mostly where your farming efforts are going to be condensed, is just that. It's just marketing, right? It's marketing over time to a specific area, to the same area, such that over time you capture mind share, which over a longer period of time turns into market share, right? And that's kind of the idea of farming. So the one thing that I want to make sure that we recognize is the idea of choosing 400 houses and sending them a monthly something in the mail. To some of you may sound like very 1979 or 1992. I can tell you that it is still very much a 2021 strategy. And here's why I know that. For those of you who have been around a little bit longer, I have been talking about geographic farming for as long as our companies have been open. It was a way I got a ton of business when I was still in the field. And I still believe that even if you don't use it as a primary source of business, it's a safety net and a backup for those moments when your primary source of business may go out the window, may take a sideways turn on you. Guess what? In 2019, when I was teaching Ignite and saying things like, you know what, if you don't have a farm set up now, set one up now, because you never know when things are going to get weird and you may have to rely on a different set of people than you normally do. Well, by March of 2020, guess what? Things got weird. For those of you who were big, heavy open house people, well, open houses for at least a short period of time weren't as existent for a while, and then as powerful for a little while after that as they had been. I think for a while we were thinking we'd never do another public open house again, at least not in the same way, right? Now public open houses, for the most part, except for safety protocols and monitoring numbers in the house, are all kind of back to at least where they were-ish, right? And I just want everyone to hear that I said that, right? Public open houses are back to, save the safety protocols, exactly where they were. There really isn't a reason, unless you yourself have a specific health concern, right? There really is no reason for you not to be hosting public open houses, right? If you're allowing one person in at a time, unless you also never leave your house and you also never go to Stop and Shop, right? You see my point? So just be careful about that. Because I've been having some interesting, challenging conversations lately, and those conversations always come from a place of attempting to help people kind of step out of their own way. And one of the conversations I got to have in the past 7 days or so was a tough one about, I don't feel comfortable hosting an open house. And I said, well, talk to me about that. Well, it's strangers coming into a house and being with me. Like, okay, well, let me ask you this. Who does the grocery shopping in your house? And the answer was, well, I do. Okay, well, how do you do that? Do you order online and have it delivered to your house? No, I go to Stop and Shop. Okay, so then your argument right there is blown. Right? And I'm not saying don't feel the way you want to feel about taking care of yourself. That's not what I'm saying here. What I am saying, be careful that you're not excluding opportunities for you to actually run your business and then doing something that is puts you in touch with far more people that you don't know. You see my point? All right. Maybe it's not a popular point, but that's okay. So where was I? Oh yeah, farming. So do remember that we just had an example of this. Had you not been farming for all of 2019, when things went sideways in early 2020, if some of your tried and true versions of obtaining business stopped for a while and you didn't have the seeds planted in that farm, well, now you were starting from scratch, right? So I encourage every single person on this call, if you do not have a defined geographic farm, and it matters little to me if you have been in the business for 50 years or 50 minutes, right? Everyone in between those two things. I don't think there's anyone who's been in less than 50 minutes, and no one here on this call that's been more than 50 years. So everyone in between those two time periods should really look at minimally getting a 200 to 400 person farm going, and just start marketing. Just start sending your pattern of success postcards. Because the question about what do I send, I just answered. You send pattern of success jumbo postcards, right? What does pattern of success mean? It means I did it again. I did it again. Hold on, hold that up, Bogdan. I'm going to spotlight you. Hold on a second. Oh, insights fresh from your local housing market expert. And who could that be? Oh my goodness. If you look behind the postcard, it's Bogdan. Right? So now you're just kind of pushing that out. Market stats always work.
Is that something we have access to on command, or something to do a postcarding, or do we have to design them? All right.
Yeah, so great question. And the answer is yes, you absolutely, in designs, in command, you have access there. There are also external companies that make it very, very simple for you to do. I would tell you, don't spend a ton of time or a ton of money designing things that are gold plated, right? It has to be simple and as inexpensive as possible. There are also some companies out there that we can push information on that will take care of the whole mailing piece for you. We use a company out of Wilton. Oh, goodness. Whose name I will forget. Debbie didn't jump on the call, did she? No, she didn't. All right, I'll get it for you. The guy's name is David Waddle. He runs a company called something out of Wilton. And what he does is he takes your big batches of postcards and he carrier routes things. So he charges you for what he does, but you save so much in postage that oftentimes we find the savings in postage outweighs what he charges. So it's still a net positive to you, even though you're leveraging it out, because of the way he's able to get the postage down so inexpensive, right? And again, I'll send you his name and whatnot. But the answer, Jerome, is yes, you do have opportunities in the design section of command. And hold on, Nicole, I'm going to spotlight what you're holding up too. There's a Happy New Year one. It's the year of the ox, for those of you who didn't know what year it was in, that's the Chinese calendar. Could you flip around the back and show us the back too, Nicole? Yeah, perfect, right? It says, my name is Nicole, I rock, call me, right? That's the short version. And so the idea of, I'm so excited that you guys are diving into that. Monthly is key, right? You want something to arrive every single month, right? If you're doing a farm. As part of your 36 touch, quarterly to your database is probably enough in their mailbox. For a farm, you want it to be every single month. You want it always to be focused on real estate. You want it always to be focused on the idea of pattern of success. What sold? What are the market stats? Maybe it's I did it again, I did it again, I did it again, I did it again. That was what I used to send. Just a postcard with all the houses I sold in the previous month. And on the back said, Rick did it again. Contact me for information about all these solds, or if you're interested in getting your house sold as well. Right? If you don't have a ton of solds in the previous month, you can always ask to borrow them from your colleagues. Most of your colleagues are not doing these kinds of mailings to the same communities that you are. And so borrowing each other's stuff is just as relevant. Here's the other thing I can tell you. Don't get specific on your postcards. Don't put addresses or towns. You can put addresses, like if it's 123 Main Street, just put 123 Main Street. If it's 456 Sycamore, just put underneath 456 Sycamore. Sold for $585. Don't put the town, because it makes the postcard relevant for whomever, wherever you want to send it, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be town specific. The minimum I would suggest is 200, mostly because over 200, you get bulk mail pricing. So that's just a cost savings. If it's under 200, you'll pay more. My farm was always 400. I know people who have farms of 5,000. If you have nothing today, I would start with between 200 and 400, make that work for a year, and then grow it from there, would be my thought. I can tell you that from my own personal opinion, stay away from recipes and stay away from things that are not real estate related, right? You're sending the wrong message. Unless you expect to get a phone call and you're going to bake brownies for someone, right? You're sending the wrong message. That's not what you do. You're the real estate expert. So make sure that they get everything related to the industry. People like to know what's going on in their neighborhood, like to know what's going on in their town. They like to know what's going on inside of real estate. So statistics is always a winner with this kind of stuff. Here's how I know this works. A number of years ago, a study was done, and they used one of those kind of walled-in communities out in Colorado, like outside of Boulder, Colorado. You know how everything's kind of built in a subdivision style with a wall around it, and there's 3 different versions of the same house that you get to pick from over and over and over again. Well, so what they did was they took, and it was about a 400 unit complex. They took, which by the way is where I got 400 from. I didn't just make it up. I took it from this study. And so what they did was they created postcards for John Smith, and they just sent those postcards every single month, once a month for 12 months into this community. At the end of 12 months, they contacted everyone in the community and they asked 2 questions. The first question they asked was, if you had to sell your home tomorrow, who would you call to list the property? And upwards of 37 or something percent, it was about a third, maybe a little bit more than a third, I think, of the respondents said, I would call John Smith. Wow, okay, awesome. The second question they asked was, who sold you your home? And this is kind of fascinating. About 20% of the people actually said, John Smith sold me my home. Now, here's the kicker. They made John Smith up. He wasn't a real estate agent. They just made him up. They made up a name, they took a picture, and they created a real estate agent from a marketing perspective. The point is, after 12 months of receiving his materials once a month for a year, a third of the people said they would call and have him list the property. And a fifth of the people, 20% of the people, actually said that he sold them their house. He didn't exist. That's called capturing mind share, right? And once you capture mind share, it leads to market share. Questions, comments, concerns about geographic farming?
For those who do it, does it work? The guys that showed the pictures, Bogdan and Nicole. What's your feedback?
I started about
We're struggling hearing you, Bogdan.
I started about 4 months ago.
I think you said you started 3 months ago. Okay, there you go. 4 months ago. And so have you any results yet? So no results yet.
It's
Nicole?
too early. But how big is the farm did you choose, Bogdan?
Show us on your fingers. 200. It's going to be like charades with Bogdan this evening. First word sounds like. And Nicole, are you into it for any amount of time yet?
I did my neighborhood, North Street, and just the streets around me here in Ridgefield. It's been about, I would say about 7-8 days since I mailed them out. And I mailed handwritten cards to houses that I was interested in, and I did get responses.
Nice. Nice.
So it's new still, and I still have lots of cards to mail out.
Yeah. So here's, I can give you some statistics. If you're, generally speaking, over the course of a year, so let's take Bogdan's farm of 200, right? What's 1 to 2% of 200? It's like 2 to 4, right? That's what you can expect in terms of an inbound response rate from a 12-month period of time. You can expect, especially in your first year, about 1%. By your second year, that may grow to about 2%. Now, that's only inbound. So that's if you're mailing stuff out and waiting for the phone to ring, those are the kinds of results that you can expect. If you're mailing things out and at least 4 times a year, either walking your farm route and kind of knocking on doors saying hello to follow up, or calling behind your farming materials at least 3 or 4 times a year, that response rate triples. Because now you actually have people on the telephone, right? So that's a way that you can, by following up on the telephone or by following up with walking the neighborhood that you're farming, you get to increase those response rates. One of the things that I used to do was always monitor the properties that came on the market in my geographic farm. And the call I would make to those people in my geographic farm of 400 was always related to a new property, whether it was my listing or not. Because here's what I learned. If a Coldwell Banker agent put a property on the market in my farm area and I called the farm and said, hey, just wanted to bring to your attention that 123 Main Street came on the market. Here's the list price. If you have any questions about the property, I'm happy to address any questions that you might have or how it might affect you and your property. Can I do that if it's somebody else's listing?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, all day long, right? Twice on Tuesday.
But you need to reference the listing agent and the brokerage, right?
You do not. Not if you're not claiming it for yourself, right? All you're doing is calling and talking about a listing that came on the market. It's the same as you setting up some kind of saved search. Well, I guess the saved search would have the info at the bottom. But you don't have to necessarily, as long as you're not claiming it for yourself, you do not have to proactively say that it's not your listing. Does that make sense? If you're asked if it's your listing, you absolutely need to then tell the truth and say, no, it's actually listed by Coldwell Banker. My experience is that nobody asks that question, right? But here's what I learned over time. Those phone calls were so powerful because even when I wasn't listing in my own farm, people thought I was listing in my own farm because I was the one calling to tell them new information about that listing. Make sense? Any other questions about geographic farming? Yeah, Nicole.
Someone is asking what I say in the card, and Joe, who I believe works in the office, he told me it was his idea. He said, just pick the area that you want to basically farm and the age of the home and what your client's looking for. And then we went back 10 years and we figured, well, this is a vacation area part. Nobody lives in these houses, and we could go through the tax records. We went through the tax records and we said, this person lives in Manhattan, this person lives in Florida. And so they maybe don't know what's happening in our market here. And this house they've owned it for over 10 years. So I just started writing cards to these people, one after the other. And then I left just a handwritten card. I have a client that is very interested in your house. Please feel free to reach out to me. I put a card inside and I wrote my email and my phone number on the card, and people got back to me thinking about selling in a year, so forth. And so I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm hearing is that Nicole targeted non-owner occupied, 10 years or more in the house, because there's a higher likelihood, right? Instead of paying some analytics company, she just decided to do her own analytics, right? And so therefore you get a higher response rate because those people are probably more primed to say yes to, hey, do you want to have a conversation, than someone who just bought a house 6 or 8 months ago, right? So Nicole's targeting people that are more likely to say yes. Your farming, I love that. I love that idea, Nicole. The reality is you can make the target anything you want. You can make it a demographic target. Maybe you're going to target seniors, right? Sometimes you have to buy some of these lists. Sometimes you can find them online. So, you can utilize the tools that are available to you to skew down a list, because perhaps if you're targeting seniors, they'll be more likely over the course of the next 1 to 2 years to raise their hand and say, we want to sell our house, because they're either moving into something smaller, or they're moving to Florida, or they're going to into assisted living, or whatever their circumstances might be. Maybe you're going to choose to target condos, right? So you might just farm a condo complex over and over and over again, right? When I chose my farm, I looked at where can I farm. I wanted neighborhoody stuff, and 21 years ago when I first started my farm, North Ridgefield, the northern part of Ridgefield. If you said you were going to buy a house there, it was like you needed to bring your passport because it was actually in Canada, right? That's what people thought 20 years ago. And the reality was, I said, okay, well, so no one's doing that. Like, no one's farming North Ridgefield, because the agents, when I started, the agents who were in my local market all thought that was like nowhere's land. I'm like, all right, well, people live there, so I'm just going to farm there and there'll be less competition. And the other thing I chose was busy streets, because what I found was people weren't necessarily farming busy streets. They were going more for the little cul-de-sac-y places. And I thought, well, that's kind of silly, because if I'm new in the business and I'm going to attempt to get new listings, where do I want those listings? I want those listings on roads that people drive past so they can see my signs and see my name. And I can host open houses on busier streets so I can get more traffic. So I did a couple of little communities up in North Ridgefield, and I did Ridgebury Road and Branchville Road and North Street, right? Because those are the 3 busier, and North Salem Road, right? Those were the 3 or 4 busier streets in town. So be strategic about it, right? You don't necessarily have to draw a circle around where you live. I can tell you, I actually have always found that I got less response from my neighbors than I did from strangers. So I gave up on the neighbors. I moved on from that. Love those ideas. Anything else on farming? Is that a helpful conversation? Are you going to go start a farm?
Yes.
Woohoo! Right. I'll tell you what. Over time, when I was still listing and selling real estate, that farm for me, I can probably point to at least 5 transactions every year, solidly 5 transactions, and that's not me blowing smoke, and it's not me pulling it way back down. That's a pretty honest number, right? 5 transactions on average every year from my farm. I got my first $1 million plus listing from my farm. And let me tell you this story, because it's actually kind of a fun one. I was farming. I started farming right out of the gate about 6, maybe 5 months into my career. I got a phone call from somebody who said, hey, I get your newsletter. Can you come and list my house? And I said, sure. And so I drove up to Hussars Camp Place in North Ridgefield. This is one of those northern, Canadian roads up in North Ridgefield. And I pulled up and I thought, oh, this is kind of a big house. And I went in and I toured the house and I asked if we could sit down and have a conversation around it. That was actually one of those ones that I listed in one shot, and sat down. We had a conversation. We listed the property. After the signature was dry on the listing agreement, I asked the question, hey, I'm curious, what made you call me? Please note, that's a question you ask after the ink is dry on the listing agreement, because before then, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why they called you. You're there, win the business. And then after you win the business, then you find out what actually got you there. And so she said, well, your newsletter. And I was doing just a silly little hand printed, like printed on my computer at home, folded, stuffed by hand by me and my grandmother. I'm not making that up, into envelopes, licking the envelopes, and then hand stamping them. I wasn't even doing it bulk mail at that point. And I said, oh, that's great. So you received my newsletter monthly. She said, yeah, I guess so. Which told me that it wasn't necessarily that she had gotten it over time. She called me because she got it in a timely moment, right? She opened the mail that day and needed to sell her house. And guess who was there? Me. And I said, well, let me ask this. Is the newsletter I provide helpful? Is the content something that you look forward to each month? And she said, no, I don't think it's either. I don't think it's terribly helpful, and I don't necessarily look forward to it. And I thought, oh, well, that's a slightly different answer than I expected. And I said, well, then what made you call me? And she said, well, honestly, your last name is Scott and my oldest son's name is Scott. And so I thought it was a good match. No joke.
Can't argue with that, Rick.
So it gets better. The story gets better though. So I listed that house for 1.1. My sign went up, and about 6 days later, I got a phone call from someone else on the same street whose home was listed down at the end of this. Did happen to be a cul-de-sac, down at the end of the cul-de-sac, and said, "Are you Rick Scott?" "Yes, I am." "You just listed the Perez's property." "Yes, I did." I said, "Well, would you come over and help us? Would you list our property?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to." And I drove over there. There's still Coldwell Banker sign in the yard, right? So if there was a Coldwell Banker sign in the yard, why was I able to go and have an appointment with them?
Expired.
They were not expired. They were active on the market.
They called you.
That's exactly right, Dan. They called me, right? So I was not actively soliciting them. They called me. If they call you, the answer is yes, absolutely, I'll come over, right? So I arrived at their house. I had a consult with them. They were just about to expire in another week or so. So that day we listed that property for $950. Start adding up the volume total, right? So we're up to a little over $2 million in volume. Took both of those properties once the Coldwell Banker property had expired, and I was able to put it on the market myself. I took both of those properties and I ran an ad in the newspaper. Now, I'm not suggesting you run an ad in the newspaper. 21 years ago, that's what we did. We stuck it in the newspaper. So you do your version of that today, right? The idea was to generate interest, not only in the properties, but in me. Well, guess what? I ran the ad and I got a phone call from the ad. And the person on the other end of the phone said, "Is this Rick Scott?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And she said, "That's great. I have a property. I receive your monthly newsletter, and I just saw that you put these two properties on the market in the newspaper. I wondered if you'd come and talk to me about selling my home." And I said, "You betcha." And so I drove up there. This was also in Canada. I drove up there. And as I pulled up, guess what? Another Coldwell Banker sign. I was not Coldwell Banker's favorite agent for a while, right? Another Coldwell Banker sign. So I went in, said, "How can I help you?" She said, "Well, here's the problem. I listed my property with so-and-so, and they didn't tell me that a week after I was going to list it with them, they were going away for the entire summer because they don't summer here, they summer someplace else. And so now I'm stuck with no real estate agent. I said, well, I'm terribly sorry to hear that. Let's talk about what service I can provide for you. And if at some point we have an opportunity to be in business together, I would love that. Right now, we're unable to be in business together. So she went and she took care of whatever she had to do to make that possible. I got a phone call about 3 days later saying, my contract is terminated. Can you list the property? You betcha. And I took that one for $595. I sold all 3 of those properties, $2.6 million in volume before my 7th month in the business. Do the math on that, right? 2.7, I was a 6% listing agent, which means I took, trying to do the math myself, 2.7 times 3.5%, because I offered out 2.5, that was $90,000 in gross commissions. From a dopey little hand-folded, hand-printed newsletter that I sent to a certain number of people every single month. So I want to impress upon you that you don't know where business is going to come from. I can guarantee you it won't come from any place that you're not. So if you're not in people's mailboxes, it won't come from there. If you are, there certainly is a possibility it can come from there. Make sense? That's all true too. You can look it up in the MLS. I'll give you the addresses. Just in case you think I'm making it up. All right. So I know there's a couple of things in the chat box. Holy Christmas, there's a lot of things in the chat box. So I think you guys are just kind of talking to yourselves or talking about stuff. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any specific questions. I think we've answered that. No kittens, that's correct. Okay. I have a lead. The house is withdrawn from the market. The seller said when the contract expires, I can list it for sale. Is there anything else I should say or do? No, I would wait for it to expire. Now, so you're prepared for the next time. If someone says to you, look, I'm in a contract until March the 1st. However, on March the 2nd, the property's yours. What I would say is, that sounds awesome. I have some time later today at 4:30 or at 5:30, which makes the best sense for us to get together to go through the contract and the paperwork. Don't wait. Sign the contract right now and just date it for March the 2nd. So the second that one expires, because you never know what's going to happen over the course of the next week or month or whatever, right? So I would again, bam, I'm right there to have that appointment. The issue now, Dana, is that because it's withdrawn, there's already a contract, and I don't want you to put yourself in harm's way by now making an outbound phone call to say, oh, by the way, can we get together? So it really needs to be part and parcel of that initial outreach by them, or else you could run the risk of interfering with an existing agency relationship. But now you'll know for the future, when somebody says that to you, just ask for the appointment. Go sign it up right then and there. Okay. Any other questions on farming?
Could you farm like a building?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like a condo building or
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. A high rise, sure thing.
Any tips on is there anything different? Would you do anything different?
I wouldn't. I think it's the exact same information. I think it's still monthly. I think it's still postcards. I would encourage you not to do things in envelopes, because people just won't open it. You'll end up in the garbage. At least with a postcard, they'll see your name in your face before they rip it in half and put it in the garbage, right? And I want you to be real about this. Expect your stuff to go in the garbage, because that's where it's going to end up most of the time. You're not doing these things for them to save all of your stuff. You're not doing it so that when you walk into their house, their refrigerator and half the kitchen is plastered in your postcards and calendars. That's not the point. The point of you sending this stuff is it's touching every single month. Bam, 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 right? Mind share over time equals market share. Make sense? And what what you end up being over time is that expert in that building, in that condo complex, in that neighborhood. Because you're the one providing all the info. Anna.
I have a question regarding the expires listings.
Yes, ma'am.
I was able to pull all that expires that I wanted to reach out, but I encountered that I couldn't find their phone numbers. So I don't know if you can tell me how can I find the phone number of those properties?
Yeah, so the best way, and for the longer version answer of this, go back and watch the Ignite session that we did the expireds on, because I think there was a longer conversation around it. That's on our YouTube channel. But the short version is, for all intents and purposes, if you're really going to do expireds, you should hire a company and buy the phone numbers. You should, it's just simple. It's far simpler to either enroll in like Cole Realty Resource so you have access to them, or hire a company like Mojo or Vulcan 7 or something like that and buy the expired numbers from them. Any other path, there are definitely free paths. They take a ton of time. And for me today, if I had to go and find everybody's number, I would do something else rather than do expireds. I think you waste way too much time. So it's an expense, yes, and yet it's a leverage piece that makes expireds actually worth doing. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Perfect.
And that's in part, Rick, because it has to be a volume effort. You can't make 10 calls and think you're going to get results. You make lots of calls to get results. So you need something to help to be leverage for you. You must have that.
Yeah, really good point. And you know what? Let's expound upon what Debbie just said. And Deb, we also need the name of David Waddle's company and his telephone number. If you could pop that in the chat for us, if you have that available, that would be great.
I can do.
Yeah, thank you. So what Debbie said is crazy important. As we wrap up source of business, anything you do, if you expect it to create consistent results, has to be done at scale, has to be done at volume, right? Remember we talked about if you decide to host 15 open houses throughout the course of the year, and you're scratching your head wondering why you're not making a ton of money in real estate because you're hosting open houses, it's because that's not volume for open houses, right? If you make 10 calls to expireds one week and then you don't follow up with them, and you don't do it the next week, and you don't do it the next week, and you don't start growing that number even every week from 10 to 15 and 15 to 20 and 20 to 30, so that you end up reaching a minimum of 100 people a week, which means you probably have to make 300 or 400 outbounds to reach 100 people a week. Whether that's your database, following up from open houses, your internet lead generation follow-up, your expired calls, all of those things together needs to start showing up like 100 people a week that you're talking to about real estate in order for you to be at a level, a volume level that creates a consistent level of income. All of these things need to be done at volume. It's all about scale. Make sense? All right, guys. So there is your source of business. So your homework, if you choose to accept it, is this. I want you to spend the next 24 hours thinking through all the source of business conversations that we've had, where you can find business, and I want you to choose two of them, two of those sources, and I want you to write a business plan around it, which means I want you to take, say, open houses, and I want you to get very specific around what are the strategies you're going to use to make open houses successful for you this year. How many does that mean? What price point do you think you'll use? What are the things you need to have that you don't currently have to make sure that that source of business will be successful based on the business plan that you just wrote around that one source of business? When is it going to start? Does it go for 90 days or is it through the end of the year? What if you started to build things in 12 or 13 week increments? What is my plan for the next 12 or 13 weeks such that I can focus on a shorter period of time, get things done and see the results. And then if I have to change those activities because they're not getting me the results I was looking for, you have that opportunity 12 or 13 weeks out. Do that for 2 sources of business and bring that back tomorrow. And I want to have a conversation. I want a couple of you to share your business plan per source, right? Which means you have to get specific. Use the 2 Qs in that conversation. Quantify and qualify. How am I going to do that? When am I going to start that? What does that look like? How many does that mean? Don't just come back and say, I'm doing open houses and expireds. Because that doesn't bring you anyplace, right? Come back and have a business plan around expireds. Come back and have a business plan around open houses or around agent-to-agent referrals or around farming, whatever it is you choose, right?
Question, Rick.
Yes, sir.
Did we receive a booklet for today or yesterday? Because I like making.
Yeah, so anything that we're going to talk about today, you already received last week. Power Session 4, we'll spend a little time in today, and then the Mastering the Listing Consultation scripts, all of which was sent either Wednesday or Thursday of last week.
Oh, okay, so I have it. Thank you.
Yep. All righty. Now, and again, if anybody's new to the sessions or is a guest or whatever, and you want to, you don't have the materials, just pop your email address in the chat box and somebody will shoot that over to you. Eric says it's in an email from Maria dated the 28th of January, if you're looking for it, right? There isn't really, is there a template for business plans? The answer is yes to that. And so you can, I'll throw one out real quick, and it's called the 135, right? The 135 is what is the one main goal. So maybe it's to earn X amount of income from open houses. What are the 3 main strategies that will get you to that goal? And then what are the 5 action items for each of those 3 main strategies that are going to guide what you do over the course of the next few days or a few weeks to get you there? So it's a 1-3-5, right? One main goal, 3 main strategies to achieve that goal, and then 5 action items for each of those strategies. If you want to expound upon that, you can do a 1-3-5-3-1. The last 3-1 piece is, I think the 3 on the tail end there is what 3 things do I need to either have or know, right? That maybe I don't have or know in order to make sure that those action items are feeding the strategies that feed the main goal. And then the last 1 is a who, like who's going to do it? Is it all you, or are you leveraging some of that out? Does that help, Niels? Yeah, okay, good. And the answer is there's a bunch of different things like that. That's just the one that pops into my head the fastest, and it's a really good one. It's a good one. We use that for business planning for our market centers all the time, right? What's the 1 main goal? What are the 3? And you depending on what you're looking at, you can make it a 1-4-6. You can make it a 1-2-9, right? You can adapt that structure to what it is you're attempting to do. Right, if you're struggling saying, gee, I don't know what, I have 4 main strategies, how do I get rid of one? Well, don't get rid of one, make it a 1-4-5, right? Yes, did you have a thought on that? No, okay. All right, so are we good to shift over into sellers? All righty, excellent, excellent, excellent. P.S. Dan also posted the Mastering the Listing Consultations PDF in the chat, so you should be able to download that from the chat. As we pivot into our seller unit, let's have a quick conversation around why listings. We're doing listings first before buyers for a reason. Why is it that when one talks about business growth in real estate or leverage of business in real estate, that we always seem to be focused on growth of the list side of the business before any of that stuff happens? Before you can really scale your business, we talk about growth on the list side. What's the big whoop about listings? Go ahead, Barbara.
It offers you so many opportunities.
Yeah, talk about that. What kind of opportunities does it exist there?
Well, number one, you attract so many buyers and people who are looking for a home and people who may be looking to sell their own home.
Yeah, so I'm hearing Barbara say listings attract buyers, right? Listings also attract other listings. What else? Keep making that list, everybody. What else do listings attract? Because the list is definitely longer than that.
You can market yourself if you have listings, because you cannot market yourself if you have just buyers.
Yeah, 100%, right? Definitely next on that list is listings bring you the opportunity for marketing, right? They also bring you the opportunity to host open houses, which is A, a form of marketing, and B, a form of lead generation, which brings you those buyers in those listings. Listings bring you name recognition, right? Listings bring you market share. Listings bring you mind share over time via the name recognition and the marketing opportunities. And what we know is that mind share over time equals market share. By the way, if you didn't write that down yet, there's a reason I'm saying it over and over and over again. Maybe you've figured out my trick. When I repeat something a whole bunch of times, it's important, right? Mind share over time equals market share. It's crazy important, crazy important. Listings sometimes bring you prominence inside of the real estate community, right? Oftentimes people know listing agents more than they know buyer's agents. So just listings bring you almost everything. There's one other thing that listings bring you that we didn't mention. That's the opportunity for massive leverage, right? When you are in control of the listings and you have the inventory, you get to focus entirely on that side of the business and start to outsource the buyers, right? Let me ask you this. How many listings, well, let's start on the buy side. How many A buyers, right? Real A buyers who are looking to buy a house right now, do you think you can legitimately work with at any given time before things start to fall through the cracks? Yeah, so Bogdan says 5. Nicole says 3. Marcel says 4. Right? That's kind of the right answer, right? Anywhere in there. I think 5 is kind of the right answer. Every once in a while, maybe get away with 6, right? If they're really demanding buyers, you may have to pull that back to 4. But let's say on average, let's just agree that 5 makes sense. So 5 at any given time. How many listings can you handle at any given time under the same circumstances, right? Sellers who really do want to sell their property no one's offering a guess on that. The answer is minimally double, and depending on your bandwidth, perhaps triple, right? Minimally double that, perhaps triple. By the time you're hitting triple, by the time you're hitting 12 to 15 listings at any given time, you're likely looking for some administrative assistance, right, to help offload some of that. And yet just the actual working with the clients portion of it, 5 versus 10 or 15. Do you see the massive amounts of leverage that a focus on the list side of the business actually brings you? Say yes. The answer is yes. Everyone nod their head. Excellent. It's kind of fun when I say that and everyone does it. Okay, everyone write a check. The first name is Rick, R-I-C-K. No, I'm kidding. So, focusing on the list side of the business brings you all of those things. Why do so many agents steer clear of the list side of the business, especially when they're newer in the business? Why do we find that more agents tend to err on the side of buyers than sellers, especially when they're newer in the business?
Because it's free, it's not as scary, not as much pressure.
Right? So free, not as scary, not as much pressure. What else? I find that sometimes people don't really believe that they are skilled enough to work with a seller. They think working with a seller is somehow harder than working with a buyer, right? What if I told you that most of those things are absolutely untrue? Would it rock your world? What if I told you that you need just as much skill to work with a buyer or a seller as you do with a buyer? What if I told you that the expense that so many people think goes along with being a listing agent, because you're paying for marketing, is very, very oftentimes balanced by the fact that you're not spending tons of time and gas in your car? The costs are not that different. And here's one of the things I want you to jot down. One of the reasons that people think that listings cost more than buyers is because they do not value the time that they spend with their buyers. Meaning that when you spend 5 hours on a Saturday with one buyer who will only ever bring you one closing at a time, versus 5 hours that could be literally spent listing 5 different properties, that brings you a multiple of 5 in terms of income. Do you see my point? Instead of looking at it from a dollars per hour perspective, we just look at buyers as, well, that's what we have to do. I'm a real estate agent, so I just spend tons of time with buyers. That's what I do. And again, this is not me poo-pooing buyers. I love buyers. It's half the business, right? I just want you to have an understanding of why we talk about listings in such a different way as buyers from a business growth and a volume, a scaling perspective. Yes, Deb.
I would add one thing, which is you can sell a listing when you are on vacation or at the beach or wherever you want to be. And it's harder to sell a buyer in that situation. You can't show a buyer a house when you're on vacation.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Right? And think about it today. I mean, just look at the way the market is set up for us today. Which would you rather be? Would you rather be the listing agent sitting at the top of the mountain, waiting for everyone to kind of climb over one another, waving their offers at you, saying, no, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me? Or would you rather be one of the people trying to climb up the mountain, waving the offer? Right? So that's why we spend a lot of time focused on the list side of the business. And I don't want you to be afraid of the list side of the business. I actually want you to embrace it. I want you to recognize that as a business owner, your growth will come from paying attention to both sides of the business, not excluding the list side of the business and only focusing on the buy side of the business. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about let's talk about process and then tools, and then we'll get into our scripts. So from a process perspective, right, one of the things that I want you to recognize is in the last 10 months, we have absolutely had to make some changes to how we do some things. And what's come from that is not necessarily a completely altered version of a listing appointment. Instead, we've created another option for a listing appointment, which is the Zoom listing appointment. Right? For a while, when things were weird and scary and no one quite knew what was going on back in late March and April, most of us were doing exclusively Zoom appointments. I will tell you that there was a lot of benefit to that. It kept the market going, right? It kept your income moving. It kept the needs of the sellers and the buyers going during what was a bizarre time to be in business. And yet, what we found over time was, as people started to understand how to live in our new environment, that was less necessary in some of the time for some of the appointments. There are still appointments that are being had via Zoom. There's still a leverage point in doing Zoom listing appointments. And yet, what we found was some people still wanted that personal experience. And so we still have opportunities to invite people back to the office and sit in the conference room and have that face-to-face with them and not have to do it via Zoom. We're going to walk through our conversations today and tomorrow, knowing that both are possible. The scripts work kind of either way, and both are possible. So don't hear it from the perspective of we're only meeting face-to-face, and don't hear it from the perspective of we're only meeting on Zoom, because you and your clients have to figure out the best path forward. I'll tell you that for me, I'm not even sure I would allow a weird word. I'm not even sure I would I wouldn't use a health barometer in my decision making unless I myself was at risk of in some way, right? Where meeting people face to face or distanced in a conference room would put me at risk, or if I didn't have a seller client who said, you know, we have to do this via Zoom, right? Save those two things. I wouldn't allow the current environment to dictate whether or not Zoom or in person was going to be my path. I would allow the business and strategy to dictate that, because I'm looking for the fastest way to get in front of somebody, right? When we were talking through our expired conversations, one of the things you heard me keep doing was move to appointment setting as fast as I possibly could, even if that meant deflecting some questions, right? What was the script I put on the table for you when someone asked a specific question about a certain something or other?
Great question, but we'll discuss this at the meeting.
That's exactly right. It's so good that at least one person was listening. Thank you, Elena. I so appreciate it. And I think Alex was mouthing it. So that was two people. But that's exactly right, right? We pivot off of that to say that great question, right? And that's exactly why we have to meet. We're going to go through that in detail when we have that conversation. And if someone says, you know what, I'm going to be away, great. I wondered if it made sense for us to get together on Zoom, right? So use Zoom as another way to get in front of someone more quickly, if in fact there's some pushback on meeting in person. The other side of that, and again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I want to make sure you hear this. Don't solely rely on Zoom, because the other thing that we have found is that there are some sellers out there who really do want more of a personal experience. And so that's not every seller. And yet there are some sellers who may decide that Zoom isn't going to do it for them, and they want to make sure that you're going to be able to be engaged with them personally. Again, safely with all protocols in place, but know that there's a balancing act in between the two. Alex.
So how do you finesse that? What do you offer? Or do you just wait for them to offer?
So again, and I'm going to speak personally, for me personally, unless it became a timing issue where I could get more appointments in if I was Zooming, right? I'm going to ask them to come to the office, because I know for me personally, I am far more powerful in person than I am on the telephone or even on Zoom, right? So I'm going to utilize the strength that I know I bring to the table when I'm meeting with someone in person to be more attractive to them, so that I can get a piece of paper signed. So I'm going to, for me personally, I err on the side of that because I know that there's a strength there. And so I also think that after 10 months, a lot of people are kind of zoomed out, right? I mean, let's face it, sometimes I can see it in your faces that you guys are zoomed out, right? By like 5:40, you're like, okay, can he talk a little faster? Let's get this over with. Like you smell your dinner cooking and you just kind of want it to be over, right? That I don't take that personally, unless you tell me I should, but I don't take that personally. It's just a reality, right? At some point you hit Zoom fatigue. And so I would hate for you to not take a listing because you pushed for Zoom and someone is on Zoom fatigue. So I think I would just ask some questions, right? For me, I would say, so Alex, is there a comfort level with you coming to the office? We have a ton of health and safety protocols in place. Is that something that works for you? Because what I find is that most people right now are saying, oh yeah, absolutely, that'd be great. And then we just make sure that we set up those health and safety protocols and if someone says, no, I think I'd rather not do that. Great, well, we have this awesome alternative. Does Zoom work for you? Right, and so I think I would go through that process and just ask the questions and make sure there's comfort, and then offer an alternative if there's not comfort. Make sense? Jay and I are going to keep going. So we're going till 7 tonight if anyone wants to join us.
And I would put an underscore on what you said to say, be sure you are making the in-person available to people, because more people are open to that than you may believe.
Yeah, we had a Debbie, I think you were in this mastermind back in maybe the late summer, and we were talking to one of our most prolific listers. And she was saying to those of us in the mastermind that she was, that coming out of lockdown, she found that as the summer progressed, she wasn't nailing the listing appointments and wasn't taking as many listings as she was used to. And as we brainstormed around some of what was different, one of the things we found for her that was crazy different was that she continued to move forward on the Zoom only platform, even after the lockdown was lifted and people started to figure out how to kind of go and live their lives in an altered reality. So a different reality, let's say, right? And so we brought that to her attention. It almost sounds like you're over Zooming. And I think that she found that she kind of was. So she went back to a different version of that, where she was now offering the in-person, and her numbers started to pick up. So, again, it's going to be different for each of you. Just recognize that could be a thing. Over Zooming could be a thing. Am I telling that story right, Debbie? Am I remembering it correctly?
I'm nodding.
Okay.
I'm nodding my head and you can't see it. Sorry. Yes, you are.
You're hiding behind your very still face.
Yes, I am.
So, by the way, Debbie did put in the chat box, if you scroll back up, the name of the company that we were talking about for the mailings and the telephone number if you wanted to reach out and talk with him. Okay, so having said all of that about listings, we're going to walk through a process that ultimately has you viewing the property either in person or with or on video, right, as a kind of a walkthrough as your first step, and then having you do some of your homework around what these numbers look like and what the property offers, and then inviting the clients back to the office for that actual consultation. And so before we get to diving into that process, we want to get into a tool that can assist you in accomplishing a couple of things. The first thing, and we're talking about the pre-listing package, right? The pre-listing package. How many of you have heard of or currently use a pre-listing package, just by a quick show of hands? Right, so a whole bunch of you. So here's the skinny on the pre-listing package. Who wants to tell me there are two main reasons that we use a pre-listing package? What are the two main reasons that we use them, for those of you that are using them? Margaret.
Just to get into the client's house before you, I mean, you can't really say what it's worth unless you see the inside.
So yes, that is 100% true, except I think you're answering a different question than I was asking. You were 100% right on the question that I was probably going to ask next, but I think that you answered a different question than I was asking. The pre-listing package, what is the main point of the pre-listing package? Not the walkthrough itself, but the pre-listing package.
What
Is a pre-listing package?
What is a pre-listing package exactly? What does it
Okay.
consist of?
Well, so I'm getting there. I'm asking those of you who use it to define why you use it for the rest of us.
To introduce ourselves to the client.
Yeah, so it allows you to market yourself before you've even met them, right? By means of introduction. And what else? Go ahead.
The seller on the market, the state of the market.
So I love that answer, and I'm going to qualify. Margaret's never going to unmute again. I'm going to qualify your answer by saying, yes, you're going to educate to a point, but I want to pull that back as well. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. Go ahead, Bogdan. What's the second reason?
We look more professional.
So I think what I heard you say is saves time. And so I'm going to go with saves time because that's where I was headed. And if you said something different, I know he said it looks more professional. I was just trying to move it to where we were getting to. So the main point of your pre-listing package is to save everyone time and to pre-market yourself to the seller. So you ask, well, okay, great. What is the pre-listing package? What does it consist of? Let's run through a couple of quick list of what that consists of, and then I'll show you a couple of examples. Hey, Debbie, do you have yours in a PDF? I'm curious. I should have asked you this.
I have it on my Google Drive. Yes.
Okay, so if I allowed you to share your screen, could you show us yours?
Give me a couple of seconds. I have to open it up. One moment.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I'm going to talk through it first, and then we'll get to there. So thank you if you prepped that. That'd be awesome. And so your pre-listing package, again, save time and pre-market yourself to the potential seller. So what are you going to include? Most pre-listing packages include a letter of introduction, testimonials, perhaps ideas about how you might market the property, which to me means, are you giving them some marketing tools? Are you giving them some examples? Do you do brochures for your listings? Well, what if you have extra brochures from previous listings that you can put in there? Do you do just sold cards for your properties? Do you have extra of those? For a while, we were doing these little business cards, right? These little business card size brochures so that we could give them out to the sellers, so the sellers could be giving them out to all their friends to market the property themselves, right? So they were having fun giving that out, but they're also marketing you at the same time, right? Whatever those materials are that you use to actually market the home, are you giving people some examples of that? Are you talking about the broad breadth of internet exposure that you offer? Are you talking about the MLSs that you belong to expose it to real estate agents? Are you talking about some of the old school stuff that you do? You know, do you have an outline that says, you know what, on these days at these hours, I'm on the telephone prospecting for buyers for your listing? Are you outlining sort of your marketing plan in a bullet pointed way, not complete, but in a bullet pointed way? Are you talking about the team that you work with? How many of you work in or with a team? Just by a quick show of hands. Okay, so that was a trick question because everyone's hand should be up, right? Because even if you don't actually have a team or you haven't actually hired someone yet, sellers want to be certain that they're hiring someone who has help. So we're going to show you how to kind of build a team around you inside of this pre-listing package. Debbie's going to walk you through hers. I'll also show you where there's some examples, some foundational things that you can start to work with. There are a number of things in Command that you can customize. There's also a PowerPoint that I'll show you where I'll walk you through real quick to make sure that you know that where those things are, so you don't have to start from scratch, right? You can design your own stuff if you so choose, but we've got things that can at least get you out of the gate. So if you don't want to design your own, you can utilize some of the stock or foundational stuff. Debbie, do you want to walk us through yours real quick? Just kind of turn the pages and show us. You are on mute, so if you're gonna narrate, do unmute yourself.
We go. We also have added a video that goes out before even before the pre-listing, after the conversation, because it can go out faster, and that goes out through Command. It's a one action smart plan. So it starts with the plan for promoting and selling your home, introduces just the concept, thanks for the opportunity, meet the team. This is last year's picture. The media plan. And this actually came from, I pulled elements from the Command listing presentation folder, but it talks about the sign in the yard, the property brochure, which has now shifted to a digital property brochure, social media, which is enormous, using the coming soon strategy. You know, these are the ways that we market to your property. The open house strategy, what we're going to do to get get buyers to your home, captivating staging, that's a part of our plan. And then I do the pre-qualifying your buyer and the value of the Keller mortgage. These are all just value adds. Then we have some reviews and recommendations. And then we've adopted this promise, which you can find this all over Connect, all over the KW website. When we work for you, we promise to provide the best real estate service. And there are things that we can control and things we can't control, but the bottom line is it's our intention to make this as smooth a transaction as possible, the best results possible in today's market. Preparing, and then we have a lot of preparing your home for sale. We've got a lot of steps, and these you're going to find in a lot of different directions. The do's and don'ts of selling your home. Make sure that you do this and get the house prepared. This also, frankly, what I'm going to tell you is most people do not read all these words, and they are words that I will share with them, that we have conversations around in the preliminary meeting that we have. Then we give them homework, have the keys ready. And then in this document, we outline the seller process. This is what happens when we take the listing and make and start it, make it go live. We have the paperwork task to do. We have the rolling out of the marketing, and it has all of the parties who are involved in all of the steps. And the intention of this, and oh, by the way, this is something that's going into the seller guide in Command so that it becomes more interactive and live, and it becomes actually a part of the opportunity. It's I haven't completed this for the next level up, but the whole idea behind this is not to get the 10 p.m. phone calls about, well, what's happening next? It's to help people have a roadmap so that they know what's going on and what should be happening next. And then our last bit is when we close with you on your home, we contribute to one of these charities, and there we are. Aren't we cute? And then I have also a couple of extra pages, just this extra page, which is if I were the buyer for this property, what features would excite me the most? So I get some feedback from the seller about what the special features are that may not be obvious to a buyer. So it helps with some of the marketing words.
Love it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for running us through that. And there's a couple of requests to share that so people can kind of see that. And Debbie, I'll work with you later tonight or tomorrow to figure out the best way to actually get that to people. So yeah, we'll tune in again tomorrow, and we will have figured out exactly how to help share that. So that we can give you an example that you can work from, right? The other thing Debbie mentioned is there are a bunch of different versions of this in Command, right? If you go to designs, and what I'll do, what time is it? You know what, I have time. Want me to show you where in Command you go to find this? Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So there's also, just before we get to Command, there's also this, some of what Debbie had came from this, some of it that she adapted on her own. We have a PowerPoint that you can customize. Here, this exists, if you're in the market centers, in our spaces, it exists on the shared drive. It also exists on the, in the documents section of the online intranet when you log into MyKW. But the same idea, right? You have your cover letter, your testimonials that you fill in. You've got some local market stuff that goes in here, but I'm going to speak to that in just a second. You've got buzzwords like global and mobile. You've got social media. You've got old school versus new school. You've got online conversations. You've got a quick highlight of a marketing plan. I talked before about meet the team, right? So if you don't actually have a team, who could you utilize to build a team, right? You each have an MCA, right, in your market center who handles the financial and transactional pieces of your business, right? So could you utilize Deb Linke or Lisa Katz or Sam Lopez as a transaction management person, as a team member? You each have somebody at the front desk of your market center, right? Could you use Maria or could you use Robert as an administrative assistant type person, right? Some people use me and they tag me as like, legal consultant or transaction consultant, right? You can certainly do that. Just don't call me something that I'm not. Like, this was just for example purposes, but don't put me in there and call me your buyer specialist, right? This isn't about lying to the public. It's about utilizing the opportunities you have around you in a legitimate way. Because why from a staffing perspective is it legitimate for you to utilize the staff as members of your team?
Patrick, it's Debbie Orr.
Oh, Deb, you're on. Hold on. Okay, there we go.
Because it's true.
Well, and why is it true?
Because we need all of those people to help us with our transactions.
Well, that's 100% true, Barbara, but I'm going to do you one better. Whose commissions pay the salaries of those people I just mentioned?
Our commissions.
All of you, right? I mean, I pay them, but where does the money come from? It comes when you sell houses. The company dollar that you contribute to the market center is what we use to pay the rent and pay the salaries of the, so for all intents and purposes, you're paying them. You're paying them through me. So I don't think it's a stretch at all for you to be able to utilize the staff members in the market centers as your team members, right? And call them what you think makes the best sense. Again, as I said, just don't call them something that they're really not, right? And build, it allows you to appear bigger than you maybe currently are, to be able to move through with a team. Now I'm stuck. Hold on a second. Debbie mentioned seller homework. We're going to talk about that in just a second at greater length. And then you have some customized pages at the back here if you want to utilize that, right? So that's just another version of a foundational tool that we've already built for you that you can go and customize, right? I think you saw that. Debbie pretty much customized every page of hers, right? There wasn't a whole lot of KW on there. It was more about her and her brand, right? And that's ultimately what you have an opportunity to do as a part of our organization, is really make this about you and your brand. I'm still looking for the, here it is. So when you log into Command, let me just go back and get out of. Okay, share screen. All right, so when you're in designs, actually this is, I probably need to go back to, Debbie, guide me out of this and back to, you're muted, so I can't hear you.
Hey, Rick, while you're doing that, I've got a question for you. Are these all like individual pages we put together? Because for me, it feels overwhelming when I go into Command Designs. Like, I feel like I could get lost in there and then you look up and it's dark out. You know what I mean? Is there like some nice, easy boilerplate one we could start with?
That's what I'm showing you.
Okay, perfect.
You're in designs, Rick. Is that where you want to be, right there?
No, I wanted to be out of designs. So now I'm out of designs, and now I will show, because I want to make sure people know how to get there from the homepage, right? So when you come into Command, you go here on the left-hand side and you click into designs, right?
I can't unmute myself because I can't get to my screen because I'm in that little thing. So
yeah, no, I know how to get there from here. I just didn't know how to get back to here.
Okay.
So from the homepage, when you log in, thank you. When you log into the into Command, on the side here, you have a little paintbrush, and that's designs. When you click on designs, right, you come to this page, and at the lower left-hand corner, what you'll see is this little plus sign, right? You got to click the plus sign. And that brings you to a choice about what kind of design you're looking for. The templates that we're looking for are in the print section. So you're going to click the print button and then next. And then when this pops up on the left-hand side, you'll see all of the different templates that you can choose from. In listings, if you click the down arrow, you can see there's listing presentation options. So when you click on listing presentation, now what you'll see is 5 different templates for listing presentations, and they're all completely customizable. So just because the home page of each of these says listing presentation template, you just go in and customize it to say pre-marketing package, or pre-listing package, or whatever you're going to call, guide to selling your home, whatever you're going to call your pre-listing package, you can just go and change all of that, right? And so I'll just open one so you can see what it looks like. Right, and so now I can tell you that all of these templates are way too long. So the first thing you're going to want to do is scroll through and get rid of half of it. But then save the other half of it and design it, customize it to you, right? You can customize it to the clients if you want, right, with their names. You can make sure that your face and name is on every page if you so choose, right? You can customize the pictures. You can give them some quick market stats. Here's what I would not do. Debbie was talking about the process. There's some process conversations in here. And again, every single piece of this is customizable. So if you don't do 2 of these things, you can just take them out. Or if you do something special that isn't in here as part of your process, you can just add it on in. Make sense? All right, I'm going to come out of my share. There we go. And again, if that all was completely foreign to you, if that's the first time you've ever seen it, what I encourage you to do is the very next time, and it'll be later tonight, so you guys now have the upper hand. It'll be later tonight after I finish with you guys, go home and eat my dinner. I will release the link for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday business one-on-ones. Excuse me, tech one-on-ones. So if what I just showed you is completely foreign to you and you don't know how to utilize designs, book a 30-minute one-on-one with our tech instructor, and he can kind of walk you through at least getting you started on moving in that direction. Because here's what I can tell you, trust me, if I can show you from the homepage where and how to go and find those templates, and if we had time how to actually adjust some of those, any one of you can do it. If I can do it, any one of you can do it. I promise you that. Yes, Nicole, anyone, even you. I promise you that, right? I am not a tech genius, and it's you just have to get used to the interface, right? And Joe can really work with you in those one-on-ones to help you through. Here are the tricks, here are the strategies to move you along so that you can get those things taken care of, right?
Eric?
Yes.
If you go on YouTube and you type in how to use command to create listing, there's one for KW that gives you all the instructions. So it's actually on the internet as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that, right? So certainly utilize some of those tutorials. And what you can do is utilize tutorials to get you ready for a conversation with Joe. But again, I encourage you, we make those opportunities, those one-on-one opportunities available for a reason, because what we've learned over time is that, especially with the technology side of things, sitting in a classroom and learning technology is really difficult for a lot of you, right? We're going to continue to offer those for those that it's not difficult for, but we're also going to continue to offer those one-on-ones for those of you who learn better when it's just you and somebody else so that you can ask questions along the way. But I encourage you to dive into Debbie's classes on command so that you can get the groundwork for creating your CRM and building contacts and opportunities. And then once you've got that kind of going, you can start branching out into Facebook ad campaigns and learning about designs and utilizing all these templates. For those of you who are absolutely terrified of diving into command, that's why we also have that PDF, that PowerPoint that I showed you, that you can just go and customize the PowerPoint, right? You don't have to dive into command just yet. Just use the foundational PowerPoint that I just ran through and use that as your foundational tool until you can move it forward and or make it bigger and better.
Tomorrow's 3 o'clock class, we will review contacts as much as anybody needs. But then we're going to complete opportunities, and I will show you the basics of a landing page.
Perfect.
Which was something that we looked at this morning on Crush It.
Perfect. Some of you are asking about the link. The link is not live yet. I released the link on Tuesday night, typically, for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday opportunities for both command one-on-ones and DocuSign one-on-ones. So watch for that link to go live a little bit later tonight, and you will have an opportunity to dive into it. The reality, though, is that the slots go fast. So you have to kind of jump when you see those links. So have we kind of rounded out what a pre-listing package is ultimately, what it looks like and what it's used for? Right, so let's answer Dana's question in the chat. Like, how are we getting this to people? I loved Debbie's idea of even a pre-listing packet, right? With that video. So to get something out immediately via video to introduce yourself, I love. We may even ask her to play it for you tomorrow. So I'll have to talk with her about that tonight and see how we can get that in a spot where we can play it. We don't quite have time tonight, but we'd love to see kind of where you're headed with that idea. The main gist of the pre-listing package is it's designed to save time because you're having so much of the marketing conversation ahead of time by delivering it to them and having them review it, right? You're also introducing yourself prior to them actually meeting you, and you're showing them a pattern of success with your testimonials. One of the best things that I think the pre-listing package is used for is that it's an assumed close. It's an assumptive close. Because one of the things you saw in Debbie's and in the example that I showed you was seller homework, right? Seller homework can be designed such that you're asking the seller to, we have some forms that are pre-done that you can utilize with that PowerPoint if you're customizing the PowerPoint, where you can send along homework pages that have them list the great things about the house. Like, why did they buy the house? What are their top 5 favorite things about the house? We have a homework page that allows them to list all of the updates and improvements that they've done. Whether you use it or not, they always want to tell you anyway about what those improvements are. So let's just give them a spot to actually go and write that all out for us. And one of the most powerful assumptive closes that is a part of seller homework is asking them to have 2 sets of keys ready when we meet. Here's what I've learned over time. When the sellers show up for the consult, having had done the homework and they have the 2 sets of keys ready, guess what? The listing is yours. Haul out the contract and move it forward, right? Because that's the whole assumptive close portion of that pre-listing packet. So when are you delivering the pre-listing packet and how are you delivering it? Let's address when first. We've got 9 minutes, so we're going to use all of them. Anybody have a thought about when you're delivering this package?
2 days before the meeting.
2 days before the meeting.
Right away.
Right away. So let's set a standard on that, shall we? The standard, I believe, for delivery of your pre-listing package is within half a business day of when you set the initial appointment. Half a business day from when you set the initial appointment. So if I'm on the phone with Debbie and I set an appointment and it's 5:52 p.m. and I set an appointment with her for sometime later this week. Maybe I set an appointment with her for Friday, right? Or Thursday. By noon tomorrow, she should have my pre-listing package because that's a half a business day from now. If I'm doing my lead generation in the morning and I set that appointment with Debbie at 9:30 or so, 10 o'clock in the morning, well, that half a business day says that by the time I leave, by 5 o'clock, by the end of business that day, she should have that pre-listing package. Why set a standard? Well, why set a standard, period? And B, why set a standard of a half a business day? What does that accomplish for you?
Shows a level of urgency.
It absolutely shows a level of urgency. And urgency for a seller translates into you being the one, right? Because you've now shown them how important their property is to you. What else does it show?
You're assertive.
Yeah, it absolutely shows that like you're there to get the job done, right? No fooling around. What else, Eric?
Your commitment on what you promised.
Yes, right? That you're committed. What else?
You put your customer first. You serve their needs as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also believe it shows that you do this all the time because you didn't have to spend a week getting ready to have something arrive at their house. You are a listing agent that lists property all the time because guess what? If it's a half a business day, the way it feels to them is they finish setting the appointment with you. Okay, well, we'll see you Thursday at 6 o'clock. I look forward to it. Thank you so much. You hang up the phone and all of a sudden their doorbell rings. That's how it feels to them. Now, clearly that's not exactly how it is, but because it's so quick within that half a business day, they're kind of wowed by that. Oh my goodness, I just set this appointment with this person and something's arriving at my front door. So let's answer that question now because I just kind of gave it away. How are you delivering this package? Go ahead, Niels.
You find someone to do it for you.
Yeah, indeed. I do believe that personal delivery still makes an impression. However, it shouldn't be you. Why shouldn't it be you?
Because if they see you, they could come out and start asking you questions you weren't ready for.
Well, that is absolutely one reason. I will tell you, I have had my share of, I have to deflect these questions on the front porch, which is why I stopped delivering it myself. Well, since you're here, why don't we just have the appointment now? No, no, thank you. Go ahead, Ashley. What else?
It shows that you're too busy to hand deliver it yourself.
Yeah, you have people for that. That's exactly right. Guys, if you've ever had surgery or if you plan on having surgery, if at 8:30 the night before, the surgeon called you and started to talk about what was going to happen the next morning and how you were going to prep, I think I'd be a little freaked out by that. Like, why are you dialing the phone? You should be resting your hands. You're going to be holding a scalpel and using it on me tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Don't you have people to do that? Right? So it's always a peer. Remember, you're always modeling behavior. And so the behavior you want to be certain you model is that I have people to handle the things that are less important than me dealing directly with you. Because when I have people who handle that for me, I can spend all of my time assisting you. Make sense? So the next question is, well, who? Like, who? If you don't have someone in your employ to run and do that kind of work for you, where do you find people? Who has an answer to that? Go ahead, Barbara.
A family member?
So absolutely, that's what I did. I employed a family member. I'll tell you what I did. One of the things that I did was I created, because I wanted the illusion to be complete, I created a special standalone company that was called Express Delivery. And I had little crack and peel labels made with Express Delivery. And I had this family member in charge of delivery of all those packages. But it wasn't just somebody. It was as if I had hired a courier to get these documents as quickly as possible over to the seller. There were scripts involved. He would call on his way to say, yes, this is Joe from Express Delivery. If you got someone on the phone, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Please, will you be available to accept the package? And then if someone was home, there was even a little slip where they had to sign it like they were signing for a package. Because I wanted that to be complete. I wanted it to really seem as though I had hired a courier. I'm going to tell you what, I know I took listings because people were impressed with the fact that I took the time and spent the money to have these documents couriered over to them. Again, they didn't have to know that it was just a family member who happened to be out of work at the time. That's the reality of it. But I wanted that version of professionalism to be complete. So I took it to that level. You can also use each other, right? If you don't have someone Well, what if I just made a deal with Ashley and I said, Ashley, you know what? If you'll deliver my packages, I'll deliver your packages. Just make sure that it's someone who is doing about the same amount of business as you. Because if Ashley like has appointment after appointment after appointment after appointment, and I have one in a month, right? My full-time job is now driving Ashley's stuff all over Fairfield County, and there's not a balance there, right? So make sure it's somebody who is about at the same level as you, and just use each other until you are able to use someone else. The other thing I will tell you is that part of the new models that we're working on and are rolling out to you guys over the course of the next couple of weeks and months will include some version of a runner service inside of our market centers. We are still working that through. So please don't hold me to that for specifics. But some version of market center based runners are in our future, so that if you can't find somebody in your family or aren't using each other, you could certainly utilize that runner to get those packages delivered. So within a half a business day, delivered by somebody else. And then I'm going to tell you what, I think the real kicker with the pre-listing package is for you then as the listing agent to follow up, not with a phone call. It's probably one of the only times you're going to hear me say that. Not with a phone call, with a text or an email to simply make sure they received the pre-marketing package. So you'll have a script now in that text or email saying, hey, it's Rick, just wanted to make sure that you received the pre-marketing package that I had delivered earlier today. Please let me know if there's any questions that you have. I will look to review some of that and answer any questions when we meet on whatever day. You may also want to remind them about the seller homework, right? Please note there is seller homework in there. If you could get working on that, we'll review that when we meet. Is this making sense to you about the pre-listing package? Guys, here's how I want to end tonight. I want to end tonight by telling you that this is one of those little things that becomes a really big thing when you do it, and sets you apart from others who are not doing it, which is probably 70 to 80% of your competitors not doing a pre-listing package ahead of time. It continues to set you apart. It continues to raise the bar. If you're one of 3 people they're seeing, and you have this whole program that gets to them beforehand and nobody else does, do you see how you're all of a sudden pulling away from the pack before they've even met you? It's just one more thing that shows them and tells them that you are the one. When we start tomorrow, I'm going to go through all the things that you do not put in the pre-listing package, right? We started to go there before when Margaret was talking about some market stats, because Margaret's 100% right. We want to give them a little bit of a tease, but then we're going to pull back and not give them too much, because that's your main value proposition you're going to bring to the table when you meet them in person, right? So we're going to talk about what not to include. Do any Q&A that we have on that. I'll give you a couple of little bonus ideas about pre-listing packages, and then we will dive into what the walkthrough looks like, and then dive into the script work that will walk us through the actual consultation in the office. Sound like a plan?
Rick, can I ask you a quick question before we go, semi-related? So
Yes, ma'am.
regarding listings and love letters, I am fortunate enough to have a listing that has multiple offers. And I had an agent today who is also an attorney, kind of sort of imply, well, I mean, I guess that there's concerns about fair housing, but she was basically sort of implying that anybody who wrote, I shouldn't even look at it because it's a potential fair housing regulation. And I wasn't really sure how to respond to that. I just said, of course, I'm not going to put my sellers at jeopardy. But do you see that a lot?
All right, so here I'm going to rail about the MLS again, because the only reason that person said that to you is because the MLS, in their infinite wisdom, a number of months ago, decided that they thought, you're talking about those buyer description letters, right?
Yeah, like here's why we love it, why you should pick
Right.
us. Yeah.
So in their infinite wisdom, they decided that things could be said in those letters that could, at some point on some planet, in some version of time, space, continuum, past, present, or future, might sometime, someday, violate a portion of fair housing. It is my opinion that we are all smart enough to know when those things cross the line and when they do not.
Mm-hmm.
If it's presented to me as a listing agent, I am absolutely going to be bringing them to the sellers. Unless I read it and it says something questionable. I'm going to be the gatekeeper on that, right? If it just talks about little Tommy and Jimmy and what they like to do and where the parents work and how much they love the house, I personally do not see anything wrong with that. Now, the MLS disagrees with me. I'm okay with that. As a buyer's agent, and we're going to talk about this next week, as a buyer's agent, I absolutely still encourage you to have some sort of a buyer written letter that talks about why they're excited about buying the house. Because some sellers make decisions based on the humanness or the connectedness they have with a certain buyer. I do not see that it crosses any lines into fair housing. If you have questions about one of those letters that you think might be questionable, I'm happy to review it with you and give an opinion. However, you're the listing agent, you get to make the rules with the seller. And if the seller has decided that they want to see everything that's been put forth in the offer, including those buyer letters, then you deliver those buyer letters to them. And
I was just, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just worried because her client is not necessarily the highest offer. So I didn't want to necessarily have her pushing back and trying to, I don't know what her rates are, if she can demand to know if there was some letter that, because like you said, there was nothing bad. It was just little Tommy and Susie loved your house or.
Yep. So here's the thing. She's doing her job, right? Because she doesn't want her clients to lose. You just have to recognize that as the listing agent, sometimes when buyer's agents do their job, they say or do things that don't hold a whole lot of weight or water. I give her credit for trying, and you can certainly say, I appreciate that. I appreciate your concern. Certainly, the sellers and I will make a decision based on all things that are above board, and they have absolutely no right to ask what other offers looked like, included, or anything.
Okay,
So,
good. And that's essentially what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the professional version of bite me.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And make sure it's kept professional. But in those scenarios, it is kind of the professional version of, thank you so much for whew, my goodness, what would I have done without you? Right.
Well, ironically, it made me think, you know what? I don't know that I'd want to work with you anyway, even if it was the highest, right?
Well, and just remember that again, buyer's agents they have a job to do when you're on the list side, and sometimes they're just attempting to do everything they can to put their buyers' interests up front.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say things that are valid, and sometimes they say things that are less valid. Our job is to simply say, thank you so much for that. I will absolutely keep that in mind, and then just move on and do what you know to be right with your sellers in charge. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys, have a lovely evening. We will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp for our start of tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 for Ignite.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
My pleasure.
Thank you.